Breaking news, our merch just got a full revamp with all new designs and items. So if you want a little more random in your life, head over to clubrandom.com and check out the store. We've got premium hoodies, including our brand new quad hoodies with the updated logo, super soft t-shirts, super soft for men and women, and even tie-dye shirts. All merch is available exclusively at clubrandom.com. While you're there, catch up on recent episodes and grab some swag and bring a little random home. Once again, that's clubrandom.com. Rula is a healthcare company that helps you find licensed therapists and psychiatrists who are in network with your insurance. Rula doesn't just throw a random list of providers at you. They help you find professionals based on your goals, your preferences, and your location, so you can make a choice that actually feels right for you. Thousands of people are already using Rula to get affordable, high-quality therapy that's actually covered by insurance. Visit rula.com/random to get started. You deserve mental health care that works with you, not against your budget. Hey, you ever notice how you remember the people who do a little more than they have to? That's what going the extra step does. It makes an impression. And on ZipRecruiter, candidates can make that same impression on you, telling you in their own words why they want your job, not just carpet bombing you with resumes. Plus, ZipRecruiter's new feature shows you the most interested qualified candidates first. Try it for free today at ZipRecruiter.com/random. That's ZipRecruiter.com/random. ZipRecruiter. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter.
When McCartney tells you off, you get really upset.
Why? Because he told you off?
You did.
Oh, about what?
Club Random.
No more live, no more concerts, no more nothing.
And then when he didn't do it, they killed him, right?
Well, I'm not at liberty to say.
Club Random.
Martin,
That is me.
finally it's happening. Finally, the Beatles show is happening.
4 years we were talking about doing this.
Really? 4?
That's okay.
Seriously?
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Oh, wow. Great to see you.
Lovely to see you again.
You look well.
I'm not too bad
You look like Martin Lewis always looked.
Not too bad for an old man.
Yeah. I was at the beach. Bodybuilding contest. They want me to come. And at his beach, I saw this. I'm getting it for you. For those who are not watching this, it's a T-shirt that says the Beatles, but it's Beatles, like the bug, and then it's 4 Volkswagen bugs crossing Abbey Road, as if, like different colored. It's so funny.
Well, I'm very touched. And
yes.
The first time I actually got involved with Her Majesty the Queen on a Beatles thing, she sent a royal proclamation about something to do with the Beatles, and she misspelt it like this, Beetles. Great.
That's so funny.
That's my retirement fund.
You British people. I had a British person here last week. You take that Queen shit so seriously. Like, I noticed when you said Her Royal, whatever you said, it was like, come on, man.
Yes,
no, I know. You know what? I'm all for, things like that, I mean, not really a monarchy, but like something that could make people feel good about their country and united. Something that's like non-political, but then everything becomes political. That's the problem.
But hey, McCartney wrote a song, Her Majesty, so it's not entirely bad.
So, Get Back. I mean, I keep reading, because, look, I don't know what was in people's minds, but they keep saying there was some anti-immigration stuff going on in Britain at the time, and this was Paul's protest against the but Get Back to Me sounds a little more like you would be pro.
He was just goofing around, and there was an anti-immigration thing, so he was mocking that. And so he did Get Back. He was ripping around with Get Back, and he turned it into that. But of course, nobody in those days ever expected loose rehearsal tapes to come out. So it was just goofing around. It's only it came out because it was a bootleg, became a bootleg.
Well, it's in the movie that any Beatle person, probably anyone listening to this, saw the Peter Jackson.
Sure.
It's in there, right?
It is, but I don't think anybody took it
No, but you see him. You see that's one of the. Maybe it's the only time where you see Paul McCartney like take a song from literally the moment of just finding it. He's waiting for the others to show up, or maybe just John was late. Is probably. So he's there and he's writing it on the bass. Remember that?
Yes.
And it's just. And then the lyrics were. I mean, you look. I love the Beatles, as you know, but I mean, they have. Some lyrics are just gobbledygook because the song is so good and you don't care. And that's one of them. Like, what the fuck is that song about? It just came from somewhere, maybe about immigration. Maybe it was like, hey, we want you here on our shores, which is why I'm calling the song Get Back. Okay, that possibly could be. I will say this, he also wrote a song called Too Many People. Do you remember that one?
I did. But the thing is, the stream. No, sometimes in those things, it's a stream of consciousness. It's interesting the number of musicians who they say they write the song, they write the music first, and then they look for lyrics to fit, which has always seemed crazy to me. Surely you want a song about something, but no, musicians often write a tune and then they're searching for words.
Absolutely, or they completely change it. John Lennon's one of my favorite of his solo body of work, which is less than the other two writers because he didn't live that long, and but Jealous Guy is a great ballad, and I know for you probably something you wrote or somebody like you, maybe the poor man's Martin Lewis, what he wrote, but that started out as a completely different lyric, but like a blue jay, the way I work in comedy also, when you find something good, a little nugget that's good, a little seed that's good, you bring it home to the nest. Maybe you'll have it later. And he's like, no, this melody is great. The lyric was completely different. It's about nature or something.
That's right, Charles, nature. This is the thing, though, you use the word blue jay. It's a bird native to America as well, but in England we always talk about the magpie. And that's what the Beatles were. They were magpies. They were constantly picking up shards of different types of music, different genres, lyrics, plucking them out of everywhere. And it became like a patchwork quilt.
I think every musician does that. They just did it better. That's what
way better.
Yeah,
way better. And
well,
also,
to our ears. I mean, come on. I don't. You can't be that dogmatic about. The people, different generations have just different tastes. And who's to say? I mean, I don't get Taylor Swift, but she's as big as they were. And, that's maybe something that can't happen across these years. I don't know.
Listen, I agree. It's dangerous to get into a better than and all of that nonsense. However, there is something that was different. There was a renaissance in the 60s of music. A lot from Britain, but some also from America. But what was unique about the Beatles was it has transcended time in that there are generations that are enjoying the Beatles that you wouldn't have normally expected. The normal arc of celebrity physics is you go up and you go down, you might come back, have a little revival. The Beatles have been evergreen. And I think, and this is a theory I have, is that it's to do with our attitudes are, we don't encourage racism or ageism or any kind of ism music. There's another ism that never gets talked about, and that is datism. When the stuff was made. And I think that's the most irrelevant thing. Saying that the Beatles is, it's so 60s. We don't say Shakespeare's so 16th century or the Marx Brothers are so 1930s.
Well, you don't and I don't, but plenty of people do exactly that. I mean, I kind of don't blame them. Shakespeare, and I read Macbeth and knew it pretty well in high school, not even college, I think. I think we did Macbeth. And I was trying to watch. They made a movie of it with, I think, Michael Fassbender, great actor, and I don't know what these people are talking about. Even though I know the basics of the play, and Lady Macbeth, I know she was not to be trusted.
I'm with you. I can't stand Shakespeare.
Really?
But all right, no. I used a bad analogy. The Marx Brothers is a better analogy because the humour of the Marx Brothers is not dependent on you having lived in or being familiar with the 30s. You either like it or you don't like it. The point is, it's either good or it's bad. It's not really, doesn't really matter when it was made. Surely.
I did really like Hamlet. I read it in college, and I feel like emotionally, it hit me because I was a brooding loser, you know.
No.
Yeah, smart, but yeah, brooding and a loser. I'm sorry, but that's a brooding loser. At college, at Cornell, there was no girls. I didn't know how to get them if I could. You know what? It just wasn't good. And academia pressure and cold, and it would just.
So
it
when the
sucked.
Help album came out, I'm a Loser, that was your favourite song?
No, I was never that crazy about I'm a Loser, and I feel like he did it like 3 times and it got better. I'm a Loser and Help and Nowhere Man, to me, are a trilogy because they're all basically the same theme. I'm a loser, I'm nowhere man, you know, help me. It's like, you know, you could combine the lyrics and make it really into a
And
dramatic.
that all, interestingly, that all comes out of one of what I think was the crucial turning point, the Lennon, and that was meeting Elvis. In 1956, there's nothing John Lennon, and indeed Paul, and want to be more than Elvis. He's cool. He's the antithesis of everything that's going on in
still
Britain.
want to be Elvis.
Okay. But, and they, you know, that's the
His
old
picture's
thing.
around here somewhere.
Sure
Like
it is. Always ghost. But the point is, everyone, you know, wanting to, we know this old adage about don't meet your heroes.
Right.
For the Beatles, they really loved Elvis. They worshipped him. He was the reason they started going. And the others, Chuck Berry and others, but Elvis was the king. They finally meet him in the summer of '65 at his house. And John Lennon resolves, I want to be not Elvis. He wanted to be the opposite. And all the great material that comes from Lennon after that meeting is because he doesn't want to be a fat guy sat around with a bunch of sycophants just wasting away and doing cheesy movies and being controlled by his manager. He wants to do something.
Hold on. He wasn't doing cheesy movies, but he was just lying around wasting away. By his own admission, he has said, he was quoted once as saying, complaining that, like with Sgt. Pepper, that, oh, Paul calls me up and says he's written 10 new songs and fuck, now I've got to write 10, you know. So he kind of was admitting that, you know, it was like on acid for a year. I mean, he was out to lunch there for you know, not obviously very functional, especially musically, but when there was no touring and nothing to get up in the morning for, and drugs all night, and you know, Yoko, New Love.
Right, but the point I'm making is that he didn't want to become just a rich pop star sitting around, and he may have done it for a little bit, but ultimately he was motivated. All the songs that come out of there, and then the political and all the other stuff, is he doesn't want to be Elvis.
As all of us, he was both. We're all both. What we all are people who do one thing for a while, and then we go to the other thing because we're just tired of that, but we're going to go back to it. You know, you're single, oh, I can't stand being in a relationship, then you're in a relationship, I got to be, you know, that kind of back and forth. And I think this is what he was doing, but in a sort of musical, personal way.
I became aware of how much of a big Beatles fan you were when we first met. I don't know if you remember, but we started out bonding over the Beatles. That's how we first got friendly.
We were in a boy band, correct?
Yeah.
And we didn't admit that we were doing the Beatles stuff. You know, we weren't like a Beatles tribute band, but plainly, you know, you had the harmonica. By the way, I was so happy when the harmonica era ended with the Beatles. I mean, how many songs do you think do they have a harmonica?
It's about 3 or 4. They went
Not 3 or 4. It's probably 10 or something.
From Me to You, Blues Free. They were on tour with Bruce Chanel, and they heard him. And Delbert McClinton was the guy who was playing harmonica. It was a fad. They were always going through those fads.
I just have never liked the harmonica as an instrument. I feel like any idiot could pick it up and kind of do it. I mean, is there really a skill to it?
It was a phase. They went through that.
No, I know.
But I remember when we got first talking about the Beatles, and you picked up on something. The Beatles Live at the BBC album had come out, and you picked up that John had picked up on Lonesome Tears in My Eyes or something like that. He
nicked the riff.
He nicked the riff. The sample, they call it, these kids these days.
He nicked the riff from, I think it was Lonesome...
I learned some
which
Tears in My Eyes.
sounds like an old Western song they were doing.
It
That
was
certainly wasn't one of theirs.
No, it was a rockabilly thing.
Because
and
we're talking about early days, like the
Right.
50s, like late 50s.
It was a song from 1957, and this was 1969.
And it wasn't their song. It was a song on the radio.
Yeah,
right.
it was a cover.
And that guitar riff is in the Ballad of John and Yoko. I mean,
That's right.
and it works great.
But it was in the era where John liked knocking off a song really fast. He came up with the idea for the song. Paul was around. George and Ringo were on vacation. So John and Paul go into the studio. This is the time when they're supposedly feuding. They like old friends. They go in. They knock it out in 6 hours.
I've always made that same point to some people, and I don't understand why they take this tack that they were hating each other and fighting because of just what you said. There's the proof. It was May of '69. Easily, if they were fighting so much, John wouldn't have had the, attitude, would have had the attitude of, I'm not going to give him a chance. I don't need him at all. Or he could have called up Paul McCartney and said, I need help on this song. And Paul could have said, you've been acting like an asshole lately. Go make it yourself. But they didn't. They got together. John called Paul George. He called the other one Ringo because he was playing the drums and the other one was... It was completely congenial, as is the entire Peter Jackson movie. How can you not look at that? I mean, how can you look at that and not see this love affair between two guys? I know the other two guys are important, and they are, but I'm sorry, you can't hide it on camera. They're always making eye contact, joking with each other, sitting across from each other. It's a love affair, and it's on film. And
I remember we talked about it when it first came out, and I said that was the whole thing. I'd always hated this nonsense. Oh, Yoko broke up the Beatles. She was intruded in the studio. John's completely ignoring her. She's just there. He's the girlfriend. Exactly. His real girlfriend is Paul, and they're having a blast. They're having a blast.
Exactly. You're right.
And listen, I saw this, the thing that used to go on that we know about as fans, the rivalry, the sibling rivalry, the healthy sibling rivalry between the two of them, who was going to have the A-side of the next single.
That's my theory that I put out there, and lots of the press people have picked that up now. I think it's a very important thing in my life to get this going, and I'm like Darwin with the theory of evolution. It may take years, but people are going to come around to my theory that John just did not like always coming in number 2 in this writing competition, and after a certain point, you can't name where he got the A side of the single. And it was like losing with great songs. Revolution, losing to Hey Jude, perfect example. Right. But there's like 8 other examples. And I just think that for somebody who loves singles and it was a competition, tap out.
It wasn't John's first brave decision at the age of 17, inviting Paul into the band. Paul plays guitar better than him at that little demonstration.
The band
knows the song.
John Lennon himself had only played guitar once before that.
Yeah, it was
so there was no band.
Well, there was the choir man. There was the choir man. They were playing gigs.
Do you own a washboard? You're in. I mean, come on.
The smooth. No, but
wasn't that one of the instruments?
Yeah, washboard. You're absolutely right. T-chest bass. But the point is, he doesn't need. He's got his mates. He's the alpha. He's the one in charge. It's his group. He doesn't even need to invite this kid who's better looking, plays the guitar properly, knows the lyrics. He invites him in because this is a musical blood brother. He gets it, and that was a smart thing to do. And he probably regretted it a little bit later on because Paul, in the sense that
I don't think he regretted it, but you have to know when you're beat. And Paul McCartney was just in such a zone. And it's not like Lennon wasn't, but again, I love I Am the Walrus, but it wasn't the A-side. And again, commercial success doesn't mean it's a better record. I Am the Walrus was a much better record than Hello, Goodbye, and I love Hello, Goodbye. But another example of we don't have any lyrics and you will not care. We're just going to like read the phone book and the song is going to be so good that you're going to go, sure, hello, goodbye, very deep.
Well, Paul rationalised it because it was it was demonstration to Alistair Taylor, who was Brian Epstein's assistant, how to write a song. It's just a bunch of opposites. So, but meanwhile, John is just taking nonsense to create a stream of consciousness.
Okay, speaking of that, what do you think of this? Riddle me this, Riddler. I think this song, Across the Universe, has a poetry to it that I don't find in any other John Lennon song. I mean, when you read those words, or as we listen to them, it's on a level of poetry that makes me always say, why couldn't he do that more? He wrote songs that were interesting, like "I Am the Walrus," but again, it's just gobbledygook. I mean,
he was having fun and with that one.
Okay,
but no, Across the Universe, the muse hit him. The music. He wrote 5 verses for that song. Normally, he does 2 verses and a repeat. He wrote 5. He was just inspired.
Yeah, that lightning only hit once. On that level, when you read those lines, the words are flowing out like in this rain paper cup. The whole thing inside the letterbox is just like, it's just on a whole nother level that, yeah, it's a shame. But not that he wrote bad lyrics, but I would have loved to have seen more of that.
But that was, that was when that particular aspect of the muse hit him. But then the John Lennon Plastic Ono Band solo album, which is only about feeling, that's not about words at all. That's after he went through the primal screen therapy with Arthur Janoff. That album, for me, is probably the best Beatles solo album. Just
Which
simply
one?
Plastic Ono Band, the first solo album. Because
Does that have God on it?
Yeah, it's God. And it's
Isolation?
yeah, it's all about mother. It has mother. It's just about emotion. It's about emotion.
Yeah, you're right, because they had been that primal scream therapy, and he let it out. And as songs go, I don't know if I love the whole album, but God, awesome. I mean, when you think about the journey from "I Want to Hold Your Hand," or "From Me to You," to "God is a concept by which we measure our pain." Okay, that's called taking your audience with you, because there's nothing a 13-year-old could care less about than that kind of line. And yet the audience was not 13 in it. The audience was 19, and that was, that makes sense to me.
But they took people along all the time. It's astonishing to think that they went from "I Want to Hold Your Hand" to "I'd Love to Turn You On" in 3.5 years. That's that gap from boy band, for lack of a better word, to breaking the horizon, changing the horizon here. And they just did that in such a short space of time. And my theory is very simple. Up until the Beatles in popular music, what artists did was they just got better at doing the same thing. You played guitar better, you sang better. The Beatles wanted to change things innately. It wasn't some manifesto they sat down and wrote down. It just happened. And do you remember Dennis Miller had a lovely gag he used to do once, that Michael Jackson and George Hamilton had crossed over on the international tan line.
Great joke. I do. Yes.
And I'm thinking that the Beatles, who were never braggarts about this, they were proud of what they did. They grew up loving Chuck Berry and Little Richard and the Everly Brothers. But there's a certain point in 1965 when they cross over where they're doing material that were beyond the wildest imagination of Elvis or Chuck Berry. They could never have written "Yesterday" or "In My Life." They couldn't have written things like that.
No.
And they didn't brag about it. For them, they were always self-deprecating. We're just a little band,
But Cole Porter did.
Sure. But in
and that was before,
Yeah, but in the world of popular music.
Yeah, that's not my era. I mean, I came into the rock and roll era, and they were. I mean, I was for the majority of their career that they were together. I was not interested. I was too young. I only got on board in 1968. So for the end of I was aware of them, but my life centered around dirt and baseball. It was not about the Beatles. That's what my sister is interested in, so I knew it sucked.
I'm getting a flashback to when we first talked in depth about the Beatles, for which I'd owe you an apology. I had a radio show, and I brought you on my radio show to talk about the Beatles. And you were incredibly eloquent. You knew much more than I imagined somebody younger than me would know. That's where you reference the the John borrowing from an earlier song. And we talked about that then, and we talked about how weird was it for a kid who hears Abbey Road first, and then hears She Loves You, and you say, hang on, what's going on here? How did it go backwards? And I think you suggested that there should be a course to teach kids about this traumatic thing of hearing the Beatles out of chronological sequence.
So it is July of 2026,
Yeah,
correct?
I
Okay.
believe so.
So that means it is 70 years since, almost to the day, maybe 2 weeks away, like a week away from when John Lennon met Paul McCartney.
It's 69
correct?
years. It was July 57.
No, 56.
No, by the way, and I know if you've got that, I know where you got it from. You got it from John Lennon, who got it wrong. In the official biography
Really?
of the Beatles.
See, that's why you have on the foremost Beatle. That's why you do. And I'm telling you, somewhere there's a poor man's Martin Lewis. Who is he?
Well, I'm fairly poor myself, but this.
My mother used to say that. I used to love that. I love that generation, and they don't give a shit
I
about insulting
loved
people.
meeting your mum. She was the coolest. One of your parties, your mum
She was always saying that about people who would come on TV. Oh, he's a poor man's Dean Martin.
Well, I'm a poor man's Martin and Lewis, so there you go. The thing is, John, when he gave his interview, they had no memories. They not just dope. They just every day in the Beatles' lives in the 60s was like a month or a year in everybody else. So much happened. So when they were interviewed during 1967 for the Hunter Davies biography, he just blithely said, "Oh, we met in July '56," because that was his memory. He was wrong, and Hunter Davies had to go back and put an errata in the book. It was July '57, and that was. I call it was like a big bang when Paul and John met, and so much happened. And that was the occasion when I got the Queen to send a message where she misspelled the Beatles' name. So obviously she didn't get the telegram.
This is terrible for the show because we've spent our whole monthly budget on happy 70th. Decorations that were supposed to come down, and now I hear it's 69.
We could change it. Your favorite number. It doesn't matter. It's still. However, it is the 70th anniversary of something. It's the 70th anniversary of when John forms the Quarrymen, which you say is a completely unimportant band, but that happened in '56.
Unimportant because everything.
I take your point.
Yeah.
But it wasn't this. I mean, if you were writing a screenplay or a novel, and you put in your story that these two teenage kids who are nobodies meet up, and 10 years to the day, almost to the day later, and when they meet up, John's playing in front of 400 people in a church courtyard. And almost 10 years to the day later, John and Paul plus George and Ringo are playing to 400 million people simultaneously when they premiere All You Need Is Love on what was the first ever satellite hookup, which I've now learned means something different to today's kids. But
it was a different.
But if you put that in a movie or a book, your editor would say, "Are you crazy? That's just too unlikely, implausible to happen." But that was the story.
Boy, you really never get over it, do you? I mean, I like them, but I got that. No wonder you're the foremost.
We could talk about the Monkees if you prefer.
No, but Elvis did a satellite thing like in '73.
Aloha from Hawaii or something.
Yes, that was a similar thing.
Yeah, it wasn't 400 million people, and it wasn't the first.
Well, it was something, or it was some early version of the kind of technology we have now, where you could get a worldwide audience. I mean, at some point, the Oscars they would always. Yeah. Had to get up there and spiel their bullshit about how the Oscars.
For what it's worth, that particular event wasn't started by the Beatles. It happened because an executive decided, because there's all this new technology, why don't we link the world? That was it, some kind of kumbaya moment, technology, let's link up the world. And each country that was participating had to contribute something. And the BBC wanted the works badly. And they were completely disinterested. They just finished doing Sgt. Pepper. The last thing they want to do is a live TV show. They just told Brian Epstein, no more live, no more concerts, no more nothing.
And then when he didn't do it, they killed him, right?
Well, I'm not at liberty to say no.
No?
But
I thought,
what
see,
happened?
again, he knows more about the Beatles than
Well,
me.
Brian Epstein does not get enough credit.
Well, before trying a new restaurant or buying a big purchase, it's typical to read reviews, watch videos, the standard research. But when it comes to finding a therapist, people are expected to just start clicking around and hope for the best. And then you find someone who seems like a good fit, only to discover they don't take your insurance. That's why Rula is changing the game. Rula is a healthcare company that helps you find licensed therapists and psychiatrists who are in network with your insurance. They work with more than 100 insurance plans, and the average copay is about $15 per session, sometimes even less depending on your benefits. Rula doesn't just throw a random list of providers at you. They help you find professionals based on your goals, your preferences, and your location, so you can make a choice that actually feels right for you. And once you get started, Rula continues supporting you throughout your care. Appointments may even be available as soon as tomorrow. Mental health shouldn't be harder to access than physical health. Insurance should work for both. Thousands of people are already using Rula to get affordable, high-quality therapy that's actually covered by insurance. Visit rula.com/random to get started. That's RULA.com/random. You deserve mental health care that works with you, not against your budget. Hey, you ever notice how you remember the people who do a little more than they have to? We had a rideshare driver once who carried our guest luggage all the way to the front door. Not life-changing, but it stuck. That's what going the extra step does. It makes an impression. And on ZipRecruiter, candidates can make that same impression on you, telling you in their own words why they want your job, not just carpet bombing you with resumes. Plus, ZipRecruiter's new feature shows you the most interested, qualified candidates first, so you're meeting the right people faster. Their matching technology helps you find qualified candidates quickly, which means less time sorting and more time hiring. Try ZipRecruiter and meet great candidates who go the extra step for your job. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try it for free today at ZipRecruiter.com/random. That's ZipRecruiter.com/random. ZipRecruiter. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter.
Ryan was the one who nagged them and said, this is an opportunity, this is a platform. A is the first ever satellite connection, but it's a platform. You can do a song, don't do just any old song, do a song that resonates. And that's when John comes up with All You Need Is Love.
I love that period in late 1967 when they were, for the first time, not because Brian Epstein died, and they were just so rudderless that they made Magical Mystery Tour, and they were so lazy that you see the pictures, and they're still in those kind of Sergeant Peppery uniforms that they had, like, that album came out like just the year before, but they were like, well, just get the ones we didn't use, the satin, but really, look at the video of Hello Goodbye. They're in the...
The pop romance. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. But there was, listen, that was, I mean, the famous footage of John and George with the newsreel cameras there after being told that Brian Epstein's dead, and it's, shocked, stunned, and everything like that. They were rudderless. John said it afterwards. He said, when Brian died, I knew that was it. I knew we were fucked. And that
they weren't fucked. They went on to make a bunch of more fucking awesome albums.
Well, fucked in terms of their internal dynamic. He knew that Brian was the cement for them.
Yeah, but that cement would have wilted too at some point. Look, they've said it themselves, and it's really kind of boring because it's so obvious. But it is like a marriage, I'm sorry, or anything where you're seeing the same person all the time becomes a real challenge. You either go into a sort of codependency, or it chafes. And when you don't have the bond of male-female or whatever your sexuality is, little things get on your nerves, and you want different things and go in different directions and are challenging each other and all the resentments that weren't brought up at the time. You just kind of buried them. I mean, George Harrison is like such a mix of love and bitterness about John Lennon. Like, he didn't mention it in his biography, which is amazing. But then, like, he did a tribute song to him when he died.
All these years ago.
And I love that song. It's a great song. But even in this song, he says, living with good and bad, I always looked up to you. And I was like, wow, even in the tribute song, you can't quite let it go. I just like to put it out there that I was living with both good and bad. So obviously there was some bad, which is like what humans do.
It's family, it's sibling rivalry, it's all of that stuff. Interestingly, I still think, I mean, I used to, being a tad older than you, when the Beatles broke up, it was really traumatic. It was like mum and dad are getting divorced, especially when John and Paul.
I can see you're not over it yet.
No. But this is what got me over it. My first boss was the great Derek Taylor. And I used to say to him...
The Beatles publicist.
The Beatles publicist. I used to say to him, wasn't it appalling that when they broke up and all that stuff? And he said, come on, step back a little bit and just see. No, it was time. They'd done it. They'd all got new loves. They were off. They'd been together 13 years. Are you best friends with the guys you knew when you were 16?
Yes, but I never slept on top of him in a van. Okay,
that's all what they say.
We just didn't. We weren't when I was a young comedian. At the clubs in New York, yes, you would see the same people just about every night because you went to the club every night and they went to the club every night.
Yes.
But it still wasn't the same as being in a band. And we weren't like working together as a team. We were in some ways competitive. I want to get stage time. You want to get stage time. We're both hanging out. But we also have a lot in common. And I don't remember there being a lot of beef about it. You know, we're all thinking, oh my God, he made him the MC. I plainly could have been
because you're individual, because you're soloist, you're individual soloist, you're not an ensemble. But here, the point that Derek made was, look, just think, it's the old thing about dying early and leaving a perfect body. We never got the embarrassment of the Beatles going disco. I mean, you know,
No, we never got the embarrassment. I think I was a little high because I was at the pot store. Woody Harrelson will be very happy that I'm plugging the pot store because it's somewhat my money too. The Woods, great store here in Los Angeles if you're looking for that legal product here. The Woods on Santa Monica Boulevard. There, Woody, I did it. But he did have a great party there one night and Paul was there, Paul McCartney. And I think I seem to remember telling him, if I didn't, I've thought it a million times, that besides the music, the best thing about the Beatles is that they did, John, a couple of weird little things, but never did anything that made the fans go, ugh, yuck. Oh, man, I like them so much, and it's still a great song, but, you know, nothing like that. I mean, John got hooked on heroin, okay, people do, and it didn't hurt anybody else, and there's just nothing that was an ick. They never gave us the ick, and a lot of artists give the ick, and I am a full believer in still listening no matter what the ick is.
I understand. Well, the thing, though, that happened, I think, with the Beatles, there was an interesting thing, a suspension of the usual attitudes of the British media. The British media, before the Beatles, were snarky. I mean, the British tabloid media has always been a kind of nasty bunch. And the Beatles, when the Beatles came along, suddenly they were enchanted by the Beatles because Britain had been in the doldrums. We were, it wasn't even black and white. We were in grey and grey.
So, you needed somebody for national pride, like, oh my God, Britain, we finally produced something. We hadn't had anything since Churchill winning the war.
So all that British typical negativity went out the window and they adored the Beatles. And that was all the way through to Christmas '67. Then they laid an egg. Magical Mystery Tour, which was a hippie home movie. And on top of that, it premiered. It was the BBC expected some kind of Frank Sinatra or Bing Crosby Christmas special, and they got a bunch of 4 guys stoned out of their head. And worse than that, it's a colour film, and they showed it on the network that was only black and white. So the media went crazy. The Beatles have lost it.
I love this period because, you know, like, I love to see John Lennon, like, doing stuff, like, you know, he didn't want to do, but kind of he did. It's like, oh, Paul's going to make us get into these 1930s with suits with tails
Do the
like
top
Fred
tie,
Astaire,
yeah, and do the top
with
hat.
a top hat and a cane and dance down the stairs.
John
And-
enjoyed it also.
Exactly. That's why
into
I
it.
have to pretend I'm not liking this, but it's kind of fun. And what would I be doing otherwise?
And they also, later, at certain points, John said, oh, Brian Epstein made us wear suits. Paul said, nobody forced us. We all did it. We were happy. It got us on TV. So there was a lot of revisionism, but that happened. But the second thing that happened that took the bloom off the British media attitude towards the Beatles was when John leaves his English Rose wife, Cynthia, and takes up with an older woman, Asian, from Japan, the country that only 20 years ago we were at war with.
Right.
And as Lennon, as he said, he went from being John to being Lennon. And that was how he's referred to in the
That
media.
says it all.
And that was the whole turning point. And since then, a lot of people, Americans, are surprised when you go to Britain, there isn't the same love in Britain as there is in America for the Beatles. I'm not just
I know that same feeling, not nearly, of course, on the scale that he. I know that same feeling exactly. When you see the subtle little things writers can do to indicate that they're not on your side, they don't like you, they don't get you, and it's okay, but it's tedious and it's unprofessional.
Yeah. McCartney was always attuned to this. I was working with McCartney on something, and you never forget the first time Paul McCartney tells you off. You really don't, because you're embarrassed. I'm saying this. This is when McCartney tells you off, you get really upset.
Why? Because he told you off?
You did.
Oh,
and
shit.
It
About
turned
what?
It turned out he was right. I was working with him on one of his projects, and around that time, I'd recently produced the DVD edition of A Hard Day's Night. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool on the exact 40th anniversary to have a cast and crew reunion and get together all the people, because I'd got all the actors, the director, everybody together. And Paul came along. I thought, this is going to be great. And it was a private viewing theatre, and Paul comes in and he does that thing that people at that level always do, which is, I might not stay, but, because he wants an out in case it's a disaster.
Can't blame him.
He was the last person to leave. He's there 6 hours.
Oh.
Because everybody that was there were people he hadn't seen for 40 years.
I love that story.
And
Not just because it's great and you tell it great and it's again makes us kind of love them in that way I was talking about. It's not just the music; it's the kind of people that don't give you the ick. And I've heard snob stories about him, but the snob part is not that. It's what I might have to. The thing he said to you at the beginning, people will who want to be negative will concentrate on that as opposed to the other part.
Who was the most important person to the Beatles on the set of A Hard Day's Night?
The Indian dude who Ringo steals the ring off of, because that's the friggin' plot of the movie.
Woody's stuff is really potent because that's Help. But
which movie now were we talking
A Hard Day's Night. I would say the most important
Hard
person
Day's
on
Night.
the most important person on the set was Betty Glazow. Who's that, you say? She was the hairdresser. They didn't care about the director. Betty was the woman who did their hair. And I managed to find her. And Paul was blown away. He hadn't seen her for 40 years. So it was a cool party. But I made one error at that party. I'd invited 2 journalists from the top end, the broadsheets, the equivalent of the New York Times, Washington Post, the fancy ones. And Paul said to me, who are those people? I said, oh, that's all right. They're just a couple of journalists from... Bad idea. And I said, really? He said, yeah, they'll knock it. I said, oh, really? Because I was thinking I was doing a good favour, that it would be, this great anniversary.
Yeah,
But he was right.
I agree.
And at the time, I thought, he's crazy.
Oh.
A week later, out came the thing, what a boring film. It's in black and white. The Beatles can't act. The songs are terrible. And I went to Paul. I said, you're right. I apologize. He accepted the apology. But he instinctively knew that zeitgeist-ometer that he has, that, the British media had not finished trashing the Beatles. They're so regretful
Well,
that they were...
it's not like the Beatles have not gotten some good press.
No.
I think the Beatles have gotten some good press. And then there are haters. There always are for everybody. They just prove that there is literally no one too big. And in fact, when you are big, that's exactly when you're a bigger and better target for them. Better to take down a whale. And they do. But I mean, first of all, it's, again, what are you saying, 69 years on?
Yes.
I mean, it's settled law, it's settled science. They're popular. They will be forever. And the songs, the music is great, even for people who are not like us, who have this sort of emotional attachment because of this idea of how they conducted themselves and never made us regret admiring them. Fairly normal when you consider how big a stars they were. I mean, yes, divorce. They all got divorced. Not Paul. He had second and third wives because he was a widower. But fairly normal. And the marriages, the second marriages lasted. They never sort of had it in their head that they were better, even though they were way better than us.
Listen,
certainly at music.
the acid test, I don't know if it's an acid test for you. The acid test for me is how people at that level behave when they're not being watched, when there's no media, when there's nothing in it for them to be nice. Paul hired me to do a film. He'd made a documentary called the Buddy Holly
Is
story.
this before or after you pissed him off?
Before.
I kind of figured that.
No, and we made up after. But the real Buddy Holly story, he made a great documentary about Buddy Holly because he bought the publishing catalogue.
Really?
And he asked me to make a little promotional film about Buddy Holly and his passion for it. And I did that. And I left the room at one point. And I came back in the room. He was chatting to the most junior person on my crew. He didn't have to. He was asking him serious questions about it. He didn't have to. He didn't know I was...
He's got a humanity. Look at all the songs he wrote that are about chicks he feels bad for. Like he has a plethora of songs that are just like, this is Lady Madonna and what she's going through. And remember the first single? What was the first single after he was solo?
Another Day.
Correct. Another Day. In the morning, she wets her hair. It's just another day. And then she meets a guy at work and it looks like it's going to be something, but he doesn't know it's not. So it's another day. Yeah. He's not going to be a great love affair. Eleanor Rigby, lovely Rita, the Desmond's wife, and what she's going through with the band. Like it never fucking ends with this guy. He's just always channeling women.
There's and it wasn't just women though. But it was interesting that it raised the things. Now we're moving out of the 60s, so slightly into the early 70s for those who think we're just stuck in the 60s. So
no, there's another. He did one in '95. Do you know the song "Mistress and Maid"?
Go ahead, no.
Oh, look, I win 1 point.
Yes, certainly do.
Okay, the judges have to mark that in round 6. I actually scored. Mistress and Maid was on the 1995 album Off the Ground.
Okay.
I feel like there are 3 terrific songs on it. Like, I'm not going to say every song at all in the solo career, but a crazy amount of good songs in the solo career. But you got to pick like 3 off each album, and then they're awesome. And one of them is Mistress and Maid, and that's another one. Like she's, I'm not just your mistress and maid. It's very channely of women, more than most male songwriters.
Right. But the thing that caused part of the divide in the family, in the Beatles fan family in the early 70s, was this notion, totally wrong and totally unfair, that Paul was somehow middle of the road and John was some wonderful hero. And partly, I realized, I looked back on it, I understand what it was. John took the path of autobiographical songs. And that whole singer-songwriter movement came up at that time, and that was considered authentic. And Paul was writing story songs, and that was somehow seen as less authentic. Yeah. And I look at it this way: John was a diarist Paul was a dramatist. He told
Yeah.
interesting stories about people's
The
lives.
fool on the hill.
That's right.
What's it going on with him? I always thought that was a creepy song because it's like they know what he wants to do. Really? What do people say that about? What does the fool on the hill want to do? Because, you know, he knows. What does he know? He knows when they're looking.
But you know what? The words rhymed. That's probably the deep significance of it. The words
they had
rhymed.
a number of lyrics that, of course, in today's oversensitive world and the way they do not very often want to just understand that people were different in the past, and if you lived then, you would have been just like them. You're not morally superior.
You can't look at it through today's
It's so
prism.
silly. But they have some lyrics that would totally be problematic, including "You Can't Do That," which is like right on the, when you go to the Taliban hotel, it's like on the towel. You can't do that.
Run for your life. I'd rather see you dead, little girl, than see you with another man.
That is not going to win you the now Man of the Year award. Correct. Right. I'd rather see you dead than to be with another man.
To segue for a moment,
But that was 1962.
65.
Well, whatever it was.
1 point back.
I always say, you know what? If it's so horrible, then you also have to indict every single person who lived back then, who was listening to it, never thought twice about it, didn't do anything about it, liberal, conservative,
Right.
that's what the world was.
Here's something
We got better. Be happy about it.
I remember you had, on my Beatles radio show, the reason I had to apologise for you was it was at 9 in the morning on a Saturday morning, and I'd forgotten to tell you that's how early it was that you had to show up at the studio. You did show up, and you were very cool about it. You were not happy to show up at 9 a.m.
That sure sounds like me, but I have to tell you, there's lots of stuff I've done in the past like this. Don't be offended.
No, I'm not
like
offended,
shows that I had to look at, I kind of wanted to look at this 2008 Mark Twain Award. I was a guest speaker on it with George Carlin. I had no memory of doing it. It's amazing what, disc full sometimes. It's amazing what your mind,
But let me remind you then of something you said that was really interesting. we were talking about.
Oh,
two. That's a second one.
We got to talk about that song.
Okay, we will come to that in a second. On the show, what I was talking about was how the Beatles dealt with the media. And I played you an audio clip of Paul talking about taking LSD. And it's 1967, and he's doorstepped by a journalist and asked point blank, have you taken LSD? And he has a split second. He could lie, or he could say, you know what, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you the truth, but you don't need to play this. You don't need to spread this. It's not world-shattering news. I'm just going to be honest with you, which I'm sure he regretted doing that because they then emblazoned it everywhere. McCartney takes drugs, and the Beatles, and all of that.
McCartney did take drugs. He was a huge pothead, and I love him for it.
It wasn't known in April '67. That was front page news in Britain.
No, but there was, Rolling Stone did an article a couple of years ago. Now it was one of those. This is the narrative we want to get you to believe, which is it was not a stupid theory. I think they overplayed it because they wanted us to believe the narrative, which was that LSD was actually a huge factor in their breakup because George and John did it together for the first time.
Dentist party.
Yeah, the famous dentist party. And forever we're kind of locked in together. Now, which is, again, so strange that George, living with good and bad, and I'm not going to even mention your biography, but at one point, apparently and maybe it's because they were so locked in then, and then it changed, that there was this later bitterness, but and Paul wouldn't do it.
Initially,
he did it right. But I mean, I can see how a drug that powerful, which everyone who's done it will always say the same thing, and it's always true with any drug, really, is that you have to do it, you can't explain it. If you haven't done it, you just don't get it, and that's not your fault. It's one of those things. And so when Paul didn't, it sort of was a rift, which, again, trying to make the story fit, manifested later on when three of them had the same manager and he had a different manager, which was his father-in-law.
Yes. Listen, that was such an insane period. I still think the reason why, I love the Beatles equally, but I love John a little more, I guess. And for me, the reason for that was that John Lennon created such fear in the most powerful man in the world at that time, Richard Nixon, that they tried to deport him. And the fact that they thought that he might derail, which I doubt it would have had any impact.
I don't think he struck fear into Nixon. I don't think Nixon thought it was John Lennon who was going to take him down, but it didn't help that this guy who had the ear of the younger generation was talking shit about him. And because he was Nixon and a sneaky guy, he'd sick the organs of government that he could sick on John Lennon. But I doubt if he was getting a report on that every day.
It wasn't a daily thing. But no, the point was that they
Watergate, that was a big deal in his
Sure,
life.
but I don't think it would have made any difference that Lennon was talking about going on tour before the 1972 election. But I don't think it would have affected the election.
I love John Lennon too, but he also is a real myth maker of his own myth.
Is there a better kind?
Well, but like he sort of purported to be the working class hero. We all know, he among the four Beatles, the other three were lower class. He was the only one with a little more of a nice house. Yes, he lived with the aunt instead of the mother, but it was, we know neighborhoods. Like I lived in middle class. There were houses that were nicer. It was just like that. He wasn't really a working class hero. Of course, their early days were rough and tumble for everybody, but and then.
You're absolutely right. You're right on that.
The materialism. You know the Elvis Costello song, "The Other Side of Summer"?
Sure.
One of my favorite. Oh man, I love that Elvis Costello. But was it a millionaire who said, "Imagine no possessions"? A poor little schoolboy who said, "We don't need no lessons." That's Pink Floyd. He said it. So we got John Lennon and Pink Floyd in the same line.
Well,
boom.
Boom. Okay, I would say this. First of all, it's a minutiae of class strata, but funnily enough, there was a hierarchy within the Beatles. George and Ringo are true working class. Paul wasn't working class. He wasn't middle. He was lower middle class. I mean, that's the kind of craziness of the British class system. But John, yeah, he was middle class. He grew up in a beautiful, comfortable home and had books. But what he wanted to do, the biggest thing he wanted to do, was to become working class because it was seen as more cred, more authentic.
We're saying the same thing.
Yeah, sure.
I'm saying it's a little kind of being a bullshit artist.
Sure. Do you think Jagger is working class?
Certainly not now.
He wasn't it? Let me tell you what he was. He never was. He was Mike Jagger. Mick is a working class name. Wow. He was Mike Jagger, and he went to the London School of Economics. But people take elocution lessons. Mick Jagger delocution lessons. He just wanted to say, if you spoke to Mick Jagger, or Mike Jagger as he was, "Oh, hello, well, listen, I rather like this blues music, you know." He just followed, because that was what you did in the 60s.
It reminds me of that great SNL sketch where I think it was Fred Armisen played the Queen, and when it was in public and they had visitors, she spoke the perfect English, and as soon as they left the room and she was alone with Prince Philip, she was took with the scouse, with the heavy, and vulgar,
That's it. The British,
great.
I mean, so much of the British stuff is written, and the Beatles is written with all that class stuff. It's written with it.
I always have thought of the Sgt. Pepper album more than anything. I mean, I've heard it was a drug album. Yeah, they were on drugs at the time. That's why it's good. I always saw it as a tribute to England, more than other albums. I mean, English, of course, seeps into all their music. They're English. I feel like in that one, some of it is deliberate, and some of it, I just think it turned into that. It was supposed to be a thing about their childhood, but their childhood was in England. So, like Strawberry Fields, Penny Lane, very English, the details in all of it. You really understand what it's like to live in England. Lovely Rita, the meter maid, that Victorian soap opera of She's Leaving Home. Everything just seems to point to this love letter to England. Not, of course, Within You Without You. That's a love letter to India.
Okay, but actually,
we have
it's
to talk about that.
All the musicians were British Indians who he'd met at curry houses going to have a good go. But I'm going to give you 10 points for that because you're spot on.
Oh,
Here's
great.
the interesting, the
10.
Beatles, in their own lyrics, there was a few references to America in their earlier records, but they're all cover songs like Kansas City. But there's no references to geography. They don't talk about geography in their early songs. Sgt. Pepper is exactly what you say. It's
good.
It's their last English album. It's very Edwardian. It's
Mr.
all about
Kite.
the past.
It's right. It's just English.
Right,
You know,
and the next year,
I love it.
when you get to Magical Mystery Tour, which is late '67,
Right.
there's a fog up on L.A. Then
Right.
there's Bungalow Bill. There's
Right. Right, they'd been to India.
yeah, and there's India and there's Hollywood and Honey
but
Pie.
I just,
But you're right, it's about England.
except for the opening of side 2. Of course, that was the days when we turned the record over.
There's the Raj.
And
That's the Raj. The British own India at that time.
I'm not going to slam that song, Within You Without You. I'm just going to say 2 things. One, I feel that as opening songs of side 2 go, Here Comes the Sun definitely beats Within You Without You. And also, what was my other important thing about that song? Oh, I noticed that when it came time for George Harrison to do his solo album, suddenly there was none of that Within You Without You, Inner Light bullshit on that record. It was just great rock songs. I'm not saying that he kind of like...
There were a few philosophical, but point taken.
No, that's an amazing album, All Things Must Pass.
Well, but there's a few philosophical things about the art of dying.
Philosophical, but not the music.
Okay, he wasn't. He went through phases. They borrowed from everything.
Well, he went through one big phase a bit early on, which was spiritual. I mean, a lot of his songs, not my favorite lyrics. Sometimes the song was worthy of forgetting the lyrics. I don't care about lyrics. If they're good, it's better, but if they're not, I don't give a shit. My Sweet Lord, not exactly how I see the world, don't care. Love the song. Phil Spector, great job, crazy person, shot a girl. Okay, that's all bad. I should not listen to this song because you shot an actor.
When Paul did that thing, what was it called? The Let It Be Naked thing.
Yeah.
And he went back, because he was right, he really hated what Phil Spector did.
I could not disagree more.
I know, because you told me how much you liked the original Let It Be.
I like them both, but what Phil Spector did to Let It Be was what should have been done to Let It Be. This is pop music, okay? This is for people like me. I'm just a young man in the 22nd row, okay? I just want to be entertained in as elegant a way as you can.
Okay, I'm going to step in on that briefly, only because George Martin put orchestrations. He was not trying to put orchestrations, but they weren't schlocky.
These aren't schlocky either.
On Let It Be, it's over the top.
The Long and Winding Road is awesome because of the production. It calls for it. It makes it better. It's not schlocky. And, first of all, this is the kind of thing, it's like when somebody says to me, why do you hate mustard? Why do you hate any food? Who the fuck knows? I like this, somebody else doesn't. It's how our ears hear it. There's no right or wrong.
Can I say for the record, I hate cilantro? By the way, you probably confuse all the young folks. Side 2, what the hell's side 2?
No, I
People
told
are
them.
screaming.
They know what. Are you kidding? They're buying LPs again. LPs are very hip now.
But the thing is, when Paul did that Let It Be Naked, I mean, that's like, George Lucas going back and revisiting a film, and some fans get upset that you revisit and change Star Wars. But
because I love the Beatles, but I'm not idolatrous because I don't think they would want it, and also because they have a higher percentage of everything than other bands, I think. But still, like I don't have every in my collection of Beatles songs. It's not every one.
I know.
What do you think would happen if you put out an album? I swear to God, Apple put out something called Worst of the Beatles. I bet you would still go to #1. Worst of the Beatles.
But here's the thing.
What would be on it?
Right.
Revolution #9, of course. I mean, you can't.
You'd
What?
have to be in a very special mood to listen to that track.
Excuse me. What are you, a fucking hagiographer?
No.
Worst of the Beatles.
The Worst of the Beatles.
What are the 12 tracks on this album? Revolution #9. It's not
What goes on? Not a great song.
Absolutely.
Tip of My Tongue, which they finally put on Anthology.
Don't even know it.
I know you don't.
No,
But
I'm
there were
talking about just.
yeah, but there were a few
Not
punters.
Anthology. I'm talking about stuff they actually put out.
Okay, but
Honey Don't.
I'm not a big fan of their covers. They did covers. They did them very well.
Some are great.
Yeah, Twist and
Please,
Shout.
Mr. Postman.
Yeah, but
Twist and Shout.
I was so happy when they got to Hard Day's Night is the first real
Yes.
album when they wrote all
No,
their own
they
songs.
did 18 covers.
Right.
I like some of them that were B-sides, like Mr. Moonlight.
Yeah.
I love because it's just a virtuoso sort of singing performance. John Lennon did have an emotional quality in his voice
that came about, those selections of those songs in their early days, they were competitive with all the other groups, and they were always trying to find obscurities that no one else knew. So Mr. Moonlight was the B-side of a song, and they discovered it, and they did it, and then all the other groups in Liverpool started copying. That's just the way it went. But still, I still think that when they found their muse as writers, to me, that's probably their best contribution. And I think it's the part that engages with people most. And I can't stress too much, I don't think there was ever any manifesto. There was no game plan. They never sat down and said, we're going to conquer the world or anything like that.
Is anybody in their life isn't what John Lennon himself, who said life is what happens when you're busy making other plans?
Sadly, the case.
I love philosophy songs like that. Like there's some songs are about, just a love story, I love you, or you left me and my heart's breaking. And then there's just like philosophy songs that are, like Desperado,
Here's the other
the
thing.
Queen of Hearts, Queen of Diamonds.
Here's the difference, and people talk about this thing about at that time there was the Beatles Elvis thing, there was the Beatles Stones thing that was a big thing at that time. Rivalry between the
They still report in the tabloids when Mick or Paul says something snarky and snipey about each other. I love it. They're both 84, I think, and like Paul said something about and it wasn't untrue a few years ago, like they were really just a blues cover band or rock, something.
Sure.
And it's true, their range is more limited. Not that the Rolling Stones didn't put out some great ballads. They could do it all, especially when they had Brian Jones in there. It was very creative back then. The Stones 60s singles are nothing to sneeze about. They are awesome.
But the interesting thing is that in that rivalry was that some of it was class and geography. When the Stones first meet the Beatles are from the north, which is, we look down in the south. I mean, you remember in Hard Day's Night, Ringo's on the towpath, and he's angry with the policeman, and Ringo yells, "Southerner," because of that thing, the difference.
The one with the ring?
Take away that 1 point again. But the Stones...
Yeah, Help is an Elvis movie.
Yes.
It is. It's an Elvis movie.
It's a cartoon. It's a cartoon.
You travel to an exotic location. It's just the difference is that with one guy doing that kind of movie, you always can have a love interest. With four, what's the love interest?
Right. But here's the
too many girls.
Here's the interesting point. Was that the Beatles, when you think, we have to understand the difference between the Beatles and the Stones was the sense of humour of the Beatles. You look at how many photos of the Stones with a big smile on their face, they had to be serious, sullen.
No doubt about it. The Beatles were the good boys and the Stones were bad boys. And that is exactly what their appeal was. It was like to the 40% of teenagers who are looking for a snarling face to put on how they feel about how shitty life is with adults ruling everything. The Stones were perfect.
You're 100% correct and wrong at the same time, because that was the brilliance of their manager, Andrew Lou Goldham, who was actually younger than all the Stones. He had just done some PR work on the Beatles in early '63. He happened upon the Stones, and this light bulb goes off, and he thinks, oh, there needs to be an anti-Beatles. They're too cuddly. Mums and dads like the Beatles. And he fashioned the Stones to be the anti-Beatles. The irony, as Lennon claimed, was that the Stones were actually rather nice, decent, middle-class boys who were roughed up by their manager to look snarling. The Beatles, John Lennon's line was, we were the biggest bastards of them all. So they were actually...
It is astounding the way the media not only often get it wrong, they get it diametrically wrong.
Absolutely.
The absolute... same thing happened to Elvis when he was... first on the scene. They thought he was the devil. They wouldn't shoot him above the hips, remember? Because
right, of course.
He was just such a bad influence. That's when he was actually a sweet young boy who was overwhelmed by success, but was really kind and loved his mother, who was still alive. He wasn't on drugs. He wasn't involved with teenagers. That's when they said he was the devil. Later on, when he was, doing things like having a 14-year-old live at his house and on drugs, that's when he was sort of exalted as because, if you hang around long enough, you become an institution.
And became exactly.
So they had it exactly wrong.
But what I love with the Beatles in their films, the Beatles, not just their films, but also their Christmas records for their fan club, they were influenced by The Goon Show. Now, The Goon Show was the British radio predecessor of Monty Python. It was the comedy of Peter Sellers and others. And that was what inspired Monty Python, and it inspired the Beatles. This is that first famous thing with George Martin. George Martin had never produced a rock and roll record. He didn't know anything about it. Why did they respect him? He was 12 or 13 years older, which is a big age gap when you're 20. Oh, this old guy.
Because he was the only one who wanted them.
Not just that, but they liked him.
Well, that's big.
That is part. No, but why they liked him was that he produced films.
Yes.
And Peter couldn't nothing more. They loved that he'd done comedy.
No, you cannot overestimate how much the cheekiness of the Beatles on their first trip to this country. I mean, that is something even as an 8-year-old I got, was that, these guys, it's not just the music, which I, again, don't care about because baseball, but they're like, of course, as many people have compared them to, that Marx Brothers quality, and just cheeky, funny, witty, the kind of thing that comes through the blood of my people, Celtic people, like the British Isles, the Irish Isles.
We embrace you as almost one of ours.
Yes, poetic people and funny people, or usually witty people, and they were in that. They were more... John certainly was, he saw himself as a Celtic. He did that album, a horrible, called Sometime in New York City. And there was a song on it called, If You Had the Luck of the
Irish,
You'd Be Sorry and Wish You Were Dead. Okay. See, again, they never did anything that makes me feel icky, but they did missteps. It was 1972. He and Yoko had, finally got free of that horrible island, England, and gotten to New York, and they're living in New York on the West Side in a big fucking bomb of an apartment with a whole floor that they owned just to put shit that they didn't. This is Elvis.
They weren't in there. Yeah, that was later in the Dakota. They were in the village. They were in a small place in the village.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But they're getting infatuated with Abbie Hoffman and Jerry Rubin.
Infatuated with the revolutionary spirit. Yeah. Nixon was president. Bad man must go. Okay, I get it. We were there. And so they put out this protest record. I mean, he obviously thought he was Dylan, but the songs were just... reminds me of that movie Walk Hard, where they're doing that Dylan sequence and he's singing a song for midgets and their rights. It's very funny.
But he bounced back. But then he bounced back. And he did Walls and Bridges, he did Mind Games. He bounced back.
Walls and Bridges and Mind Games are not great solo albums.
They're not great solo, but there are good songs on them.
There are some good songs, but I only have 15 Lennon songs. Now, again, that's because he took 5 years off. But, the ones that are good are amazing. It's nice to know that his last one is maybe my favorite of all time, Starting Over. Again, Phil Spector, got to give you Props on that one. Should not have shot that girl. Let me say that again.
Except
you
that
should
was
not have shot that girl, but the wall of sound, reverb on that, the production on that is so
Yeah,
immaculate.
it was Jack Douglas who produced it, but no matter.
No!
Yes, sadly it was, yes.
That's not Phil Spector. Well, they learned it from Phil Spector.
You could say homage to Phil Spector.
This guy sounds like the poor man's Phil Spector.
It has that thing.
Who produced that?
Jack Douglas, who was a terrific guy who worked with Aerosmith, and he'd actually, I think he passed recently, but he brought some that album. There were some beautiful songs. But
Woman.
Is there anything? Woman. Here's the line when you were talking about Jealous Guy. First of all, Jealous Guy and Woman.
Right,
In
right.
Jealous Guy, how many macho men didn't say things like, I didn't mean to hurt you, I'm just a jealous guy. You didn't own up to jealousy. And help saying...
Plainly, he didn't, because we talked about it. He had a song that says, I'd rather see you dead, little
But he
girl.
also had a song that said,
No,
every
it's
now and then I feel so insecure.
Yeah.
Grown men did not, macho guys did not admit to insecurity.
It's a great arc to go, if you were writing a screenplay or looking for character arcs and development, to go from I'd rather see you dead to the lyrics of Jealous Guy, which are very self-aware and talking about who he is. I'm just a jealous guy.
And isn't the essence of him in that song Woman, where he says, I know you understand, the little child.
Yeah.
That's it. He's starting to get it. He's starting to
There's no
understand.
doubt that Yoko had a hold on him. I'm not a Yoko basher, and I'm sure that there was elements of that were completely real. And then there's some stuff that I didn't know I did the review of that book, 150 Glimpses of the Beatles.
Yes.
It's I loved doing that. It was during the pandemic. I had the time, and I wrote a book review for the New York Times of that book. And at least in that book, he says, I did not realize until I read it, Yoko sent him letters every day when he was in India and would jump in the car. And then he, deadpan something like, perseverance was her secret weapon.
This is...
And I didn't know that, the fact that she went after him so hard, and that Linda and Yoko went after the other one. Linda went after John, and she went after... Is that right?
There's an element of that for sure. Interestingly, I think that they were fortunate in the people around them, fortunate in the romantic partners they had. The women around... look at this. If the Beatles had been in the clutches of Colonel Tom Parker, we would never have had what they evolved to do, because he'd have made them continue to do the same.
I disagree, because Elvis was a sad hillbilly, and they're smart, savvy guys, and they would never put up with a Colonel Tom Parker.
Well, okay, but that's true.
They're just not Elvis-y. I love Elvis, but he was like pure talent, and I wasn't surprised, or I'm not surprised now that he only lived to 42.
How did you feel about him going to Nixon and saying the Beatles are un-American, which the Beatles were most amused by?
I fucking love it. I fucking love this drug addict getting on the plane to the guy who invented the Drug Enforcement Administration, all stoned, wearing the sunglasses, left the house with no money. What is the form of currency, sir? I'm Elvis Presley is my form of currency. Don't you see the cape? And gets to the White House without an appointment, wearing a cape. It's like, sir, Elvis is at the front gate. Damn, we almost had the Vietnam War solved. Send him in. Henry, I'll get back to you later. Elvis, and then you're right. It's all just because it's very Trumpian. It's like, I can get away with this. I'm going to do it. It's a bar fight. I'm going to pick this up and use it. And man, he wanted to get the Beatles, and you can't blame him when somebody eats your lunch as bad as they did his. Not that he wasn't old news by the time they came along. That was his own.
It was at that time. But there was an irony there. Here's the thing. Paul forgave him. He just said, disappointed it happened, but didn't stop loving the music they'd created. Didn't say, I hate Elvis or anything like that. John was acerbic when Elvis died. Elvis died when he went in the army.
Yeah.
That's his line. And
Not true. Elvis died in a lot of ways for a long time. The voice never left him. There's not a lot of great stuff from the 8 or 9 years when he did movie musicals. Those 30 travelogues he did, they were all the same movie. It was not, but wise men say, what's that one? That came from
Only Fools Rush In.
Yeah. I mean, he still did that in concert. It's a good ballad. It's not the greatest thing ever.
But no, the thing was, he at the point, listen, Elvis couldn't have rebelled against Colonel Tom Parker in the early years. By the time of 66, 67, 68, there were artists who did rebel against their managers. They sought a lawyer and got out of the deal.
Yeah,
Elvis,
he was a sad hillbilly who couldn't figure out how to break free of his father figure. He's weird because what he was always doing was mourning his mother. He needed a mother figure. He had a father. It seemed like a nice guy who kind of went along with everything. How could he not? I mean,
But listen, he had the talent. He inspired at the time when that hit in Britain. It made the impact. If there's no Elvis, there's no Beatles.
And Elvis had an amazing period when he finally got out of the movie contract, when he was a 35-year-old grown-ass man, and he wasn't singing about fucking Hound Dog and all that bullshit. I don't like that music at all. But the music he did from 1969, Suspicious Minds, through almost
in the ghetto.
Almost yes, great songs.
Oh no, that's really good.
I don't think before that song Elvis really cared that much about what was going on in the ghetto. I never took those lyrics terribly to heart. You're like, oh, Elvis is...
something that it also reminds me, that thing where Paul has sometimes been accused of embellishing or revisiting history. That happens with people. Your memories aren't perfect and you revisit and you tell a story. But there was a famous thing that happened when the song Blackbird was being re-examined and being talked about, and Paul gave an interview somewhere where he was talking about Blackbird and said that, Angela Davis was something I was thinking about. And he got pounced on because the truth was, because Angela Davis wasn't known in America or Britain in 1968. She wasn't known till after he wrote that song. So for a year or so, people were piling on Paul and saying, what a bloody hypocrite, he's making it up. And I thought, that's not right. I know it's not right. And I did some delving in the archives, and I found a rare audio tape that proved that Paul was telling the truth. In 1968, he produced an album with Mary Hopkin. You remember she did a song called Both Were the Days. And he
went to #1.
Yeah, and he was friends with...
The old Russian folk song.
Yeah, it is by Gene Raskin. And she... Paul was very friendly at that time with Donovan, who'd been with them to the India, to the Maharishi.
What was the follow-up single?
Those are the days after that. Tema Harbor. No, Goodbye.
Correct, for 10 points.
And then Tema Harbor.
And that's a better song than Those Were the Days.
But with that thing, so Donovan Paul's asked Donovan, can you come up with a song for Mary? So Donovan had written a couple of songs, and they're in the studio. I found the audio tape. They're rehearsing, and as they do with their warm-up, they're playing each other's songs. So Donovan sings Sunshine Superman, Paul sings Blackbird. And Donovan said, oh, that's the one you were writing in India.
Right.
And then Paul said, yeah, I got into trouble with that last night. I said, what are you talking about? And Paul said, I ran into Diana Ross at a club in London, and she started giving him grief about writing a song and using the word bird, which is an English term for a girl, about black women. And so there's Paul talking about it, that it was, and then Paul says, oh, I saw some news footage on TV about these black women protesting in America. So there it was from 1968. Paul did write the song based on that, but he'd been tripped up because he misremembered and threw in Angela Davis's name, and that was somehow he was thrown against it.
Well, that's what I call bad faith, which there's a lot of that in the media.
Sure.
Bad faith means when you know what the truth is, but you know you can get these dummies to believe this worse thing, And they will, because when people just want to believe, people have shitty lives, and they want to believe bad things about celebrities. People who have good lives, they're not really rooting for that. It's a lot more helpful if you're going through some sort of horrible divorce or a drug addiction or Britney Spears or whatever you're doing that's like sad and terrible. It's like, oh, well, you know, that's what happens when you become a famous pop star. So good on me that I didn't. You
Check it
know?
out. I mean, listen, part of my Beatles passion is not just the Beatles and that era. It's the ancillary things, the things they did afterwards. And in particular, I know this firsthand from a couple of perspectives. George Harrison is, you know, people used to mock some of the spirituality, got a little bit pompous sometimes on the spirituality. He was sincere, but, you know, he got a little overblown. He did two things that are really crucial. One, the concept of Bangladesh. Before then, there had never been
Absolutely.
a pulling together.
Groundbreaking. August 1st, 1971, kids, look it up.
You did, absolutely. And when I got involved with John Cleese and Monty Python, we did the Secret Policeman's Ball thing. What were we looking at? We were looking at concept of Bangladesh. Could we do with comedy what he'd done with rock and roll?
I was 15. It was on the front page of the New York Times. Of course, there was no color back then in newspapers. But he was wearing an orange shirt with a white suit. You know, he just looked cool, a beard, hot backup singers behind him who I'm sure were in love with him. I mean, it was just like, and it was Madison Square Garden, and Ringo was behind him playing drums. It was just, for a 15-year-old, it was like one of the, and good cause. And, you know, back then, we have raised $3 million. Oh, my God, what an ungodly sum.
Yeah, Alan Klein found it hard to live on that.
But let's talk about solo careers, because
sorry, can I finish one small point and then I'll draw the solo career?
Sorry.
The other thing he did was he single-handedly almost revived the British film industry in the 1980s. It was going to shit, and he financed Monty Python's Life of Brian. Their backers had pulled out. He financed the film. He financed all these other films with Bob Hoskins, Longer Friday. This was great.
Beatle fans know all this.
No, I'm saying, but
Talking about what they don't know.
Okay, all right.
They know these stories.
But Will, what your following is way more than just Beatles fans.
Yeah, but I bet you have to kind of be Beatle. Maybe you're right. Maybe that's not true.
I don't think everybody knows everything.
Yeah, I've just heard these stories. There is lore. I mean, it almost, you could see how things like this could become a religion. Same thing with Elvis. You know, it was very similar to Jesus, the refulgent life giver, the white, silk thing. I mean, it was just, and people worship him. Some think he's still alive. He was resurrected. So there is all that. But I want to ask, come on, like if you had to pick or put in order solo career output, 1, 2, 3.
Well,
4.
It's unequal.
Yeah, of course. Of course, we understand John is going to be third because he died. That's just what happened. But, okay, I'll go. Jesus Christ. Are you their fucking publicist?
I'm not their fucking publicist.
Okay, I would put Paul first because he just has the most, I think, songs. But I don't know, George also has, like, I don't know, I'm guessing 50 ones that I just love. And I only keep the ones I like. Now, it's uneven. All Things Must Pass. Every song? No, but like, boy, there's 6 or 8 that are just great. Most of the up-tempo ones, although Beware of Darkness, I mean, boy, talk about a lugubrious toe tapper, but an amazing song. Like, I mean, I live my life by one rule, beware of Maya. I don't know what it is, but I'm always on the lookout for it. But it's a great album, and to your point, like, just a lot of spirituality shoved down your throat. I just accept it. It's fine. I don't care. I will say this, his last album, I feel he finally wrote a spiritual song that didn't hit you over the head like the other ones did, and I thought it was his best one. Probably people don't know it because it's on the last album, and it's called The Rising Sun. Do you know it?
I do know it a little bit, yes.
It's I just think it's so beautiful, and it's not like all this, you know, right on the table. Remember the one, John and Paul in the material world, living in the material. John and Paul in the material world, like you're not. Like George Harrison living in his castle wasn't part of the material world. in that fucking awesome place he had.
Listen, it was awful for all of them having that wretched, tall shadow of the Beatles. I mean, you have to admire how McCartney got on with a solo career after the Beatles. It was so wretched. It was such a big, daunting thing to deal with. And forming Wings, which, let's face it, it was really Paul McCartney and his band, but it was the way he chose to deal with it. They all dealt with it in different ways. Did you know that Ringo was initially in the first 2 years, was the most successful solo Beatle? He had more hits.
Yeah, he had a lot
than
of
the others.
he had a lot of hit singles. Again, the thing that makes me so emotional about them, the way the other Beatles helped him. George gave him Photograph.
Yes.
Right? Or was it Don't Come Easy?
And It Don't Come Easy, and they worked on together on Back Off Boogaloo.
But he wrote, there's a George Harrison version of It Don't Come Easy. It's a great song. To give away a great song is a great act of kindness. I know John suggested some songs that he did, like You're 16.
And he wrote I'm the Greatest.
Okay, that's not
And
my
our mutual friend Richard Perry produced that album, the Ringo album, which was just terrific.
I don't know about that.
Oh, no, it was great pop.
It was
great pop.
I look, I can only tell you what I mean, there was a good song at the end that I had for a long time, For You and Me, Babe, the end is down here, and he thanks everybody at the end. It's a lot of talking on the record, so it kind of had to go. But no, he's got some, I mean, there's a song, he did a tribute song for for George, called Never Without You. Never Without, that song is a killer, make you cry. And it's interesting, he did a tribute song to George. George did a tribute song to John. Paul did a tribute song to John, but who didn't? And Ringo did a tribute song to George, but not to John. It's interesting that by the tribute songs we can read between the lines.
You seem to be quite a Beatles fan there. You really know your stuff.
Well, the Paul McCartney tribute song is called Here Today.
Here Today is one of McCartney's finest songs. It's pure emotion. The essence of it, the way that he wrote it, the construction of it. He did one of those little pop-up things at Amoeba Records, and he did that. I was invited along to it, and it was absolutely stunning. He breaks up in the middle of the song. It just suddenly hits it.
Really?
And he does this little vocal trick because he's starting to lose it. And he does this vocal trick. We go, oh, like a little way to reboot his voice so he won't break up. It was astonishing.
Wow.
And there's a clip of it online. But I remember watching it at the time, and you were so moved by it. But it was uncharacteristic for Paul to be that emotional. By the way, do you remember all the shit he was given when he said, when he was asked how he felt about John being shown? He said, you know, it's a drag. And he was saying, oh, how inconsiderate. That's just, you're being doorstepped back out. What do you think?
That's the world. It's haters.
It's
like the world is just full of haters, and their job is to, however you handle something, hate it. I always say it's like relationship breakups. When you break up, however you do it, the other person just wants to hate that. If you're honest, you should have spared my feelings. If you spared my feelings, you should have been honest, because they just want to hate you. And it's okay. We've all been there.
As Homo sapiens.
And people just want to find something to bitch at and hate. And there was no thing he could have said that would have satisfied them, but they weren't. Because when there's no
why
rules to the
should
game.
he have to share his innermost grief to a TV camera crew at that split second, the day after? And there's in the movie Daniel, there's a great line where the daughter of the Rosenbergs, as depicted, is really very sad, and somebody says, well, why can't you get over it? And the line is, did it ever occur to you she might just be inconsolable? I thought, what a word, inconsolable.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's probably how Paul felt at that moment. And why?
Yeah, I mean, also, he said it's a drag. It's not like he said, oh, good, he's dead. You know what? I never liked the guy. I said, man, there's argument about who wrote In My Life. I say I did it, and I'm glad that didn't happen. He said it's a drag, which it was.
Which it was. And the thing
continues to be. I mean, I can't believe it's like coming up on 50 years. Fuck, are we old? I mean, 1980, so it's been 46 years since John Lennon. That's, I mean, when you think about 70 years, okay, say the Beatles were certainly right in the middle of being the biggest stars in the world 60 years ago. Let's go back to 1966. Well, when I was 10, what would have been a song from 1906? No, from 1896 would be 60 years before when I was listening to the Beatles. That's what kids must think about us talking about a song from 1966, except for the fact that the Beatles music definitely endured in the culture. It's in commercials. Kids do know it. Whereas at 1896, what would be a song I would know from there? Maybe you could, oh, okay, I don't know, Mary Row Your Boat, some ancient song. And Alexander's Ragtime Band or some shit, but those songs died out. Beatles songs didn't die out, yes, more than when in their heyday, of course, but they didn't die out nearly to the same degree as something from 1896 did for me.
Right, and you're right, and I think that's partly because I think it was also, it was like almost a perfect storm of the way media developed and the transistor radio and everything. That would never happen again today. That what happened with the Beatles on that level could never happen because it was just a confluence.
The technology helped them.
The technology and the times, it just happened. It was meant to be, if you believe in that sort of thing. But certainly, no, I don't think that can ever recreate.
The fact that they were playing stadium concerts through the PA system of the stadium. None of their own equipment. They just came in there and they used the same speaker that the team used.
The hot dog announcement.
Number 7, batting number 7, Mickey Mantle. Number 7. That's the speaker that they were and playing to, but nobody was listening.
And they couldn't hear themselves. No wonder they stopped. Now it is the 60th anniversary of the Beatles quitting live performance, which was the breakthrough point at Candlestick Park, end of August 1966. They said that we're done, we're over. And Brian Epstein thought that was the end for them. He didn't understand, but they wanted out. It wasn't that they started. Oh, it would be better in the studio. They just wanted to stop.
I don't believe in the universe, although I know it's up there. But if I did, I would say like 1966, 6-6. I never was a big fan of sixes. The devil thing, I'm sure it's bullshit. I just, so like that year, and then it was just like everything conspired against them. Like they just had ugliness all
Well, if you want to
year.
make it 666, it's June 66.
Yeah.
That's when the We're Bigger Than Jesus blows up out of
that one, plus getting roughed up in
Manila.
in Asia.
Manila.
Like the Japanese, they were, I think they didn't rough them up, but I think they don't make noise during a concert. It was like shit like that. Like, oh wow.
Yeah, it was because of Imelda Marcus. They turned down an invitation.
That's the Philippines, not Japan.
Yeah,
I think Japan, the audience just didn't they were like having the time of their life and going.
It's different audience reaction.
No, Manila was actually scary because they seemed to be now we would say they were symbolizing colonization and colonizers, because here are these white guys coming in to the Philippines and insulting the first lady. Like, would they do that to a white first lady? Would they do that to the queen? No, but to our queen, they can't be bothered to show up. That was the subtext. And, the British certainly earned that. For the kids today who don't know what colonization is, that's some actual colonization. When you go into a place that's nothing like you, and you make it, India is very British colonized. Some for the good. That's the great scene in the Monty Python movie about what did the Romans ever do for
you? Apart from this, apart from that, the wine, the alcohol, the wine.
Sanitation.
Yeah, but
Public
apart from that, what else have you done?
Safety, aqueducts, agriculture, what have they ever?
And thank God George Harrison financed that film. You might remember, do you remember his line when they said, why did you put up 5 million? He said, I wanted to see the
it.
film.
That's
But-
nothing more baller than that.
They did have that kind of thing. I remember with,
Let's go through his great songs.
okay.
Okay, All Things Must Pass, bunch of great songs on that. Never crazy about the title song, a little lugubrious and slow. Some of them were. But the up-tempo ones, The Lord Is a Waiting on You All, and, just wah wah, just really, it's funny, when he wanted to rock, it didn't matter if the lyrics matched. Like, all those years ago, which the tribute song, it's like a very upbeat song about...
It wasn't written as a John tribute. It was a melody he got.
The lyrics don't match.
That's right. The melody had been written the previous year, and he repurposed it. That's right. The Beatles are very economical. They repurpose. But the interesting thing is, do you remember the track one of side one of that album?
What album?
Of the All Things Must Pass, because it's very significant.
What is it?
It's I'd Have You Anytime.
Oh yeah, the Dylan.
Yes, it's a Dylan Harrison composition.
Yes, it is.
And you know why it's track one, side one?
Why?
It's George's fuck you to John and Paul. You don't rate me as a writer, but I'm writing with Bob Dylan.
Wow.
And that's serious.
That's
I know
awesome.
that's that.
I didn't know that. That's great.
And he understandably felt pissed off. He was struggling to get his song. In any other band...
There's a video very soon after that. It's early 70s, and George is at John's house. And they're around the breakfast table, and they're like joking, and like, I'm Beatle Ed.
That's because that's when they're doing the Imagine album. They're doing
obviously again these feelings are mixed. So there is hate and there is love, and they are living side by side, as they are for many people.
But what they never stop doing is the little sniping at the Stones, who they love. It's on the Sgt. Pepper calendar. It says, Rolling Stones, good guys.
They're like the Jews. It's like the Shiites and the Sunnis hate each other, but we'll all work together.
And everybody hates the Jews.
We can get the Jews.
That with Tom Lehrer. But no, the Stones, remember that when Andrew Oldham bumps into them on the street, John and Paul had just come from a industry awards lunch, and Andrew, who had been PR for them 6 months earlier, has now signed the Stones, and he's taken the Beatles and Stones to see each other, and he says, the guys need a song. Because at that time, they put out their first single, The Stones. It was Come On, the Chuck Berry song. It had failed. And at that time, the Beatles John and Paul had given songs to other artists that had hits. So Andrew said, can you give them a song? Give them a song. And so they go in to meet the Stones, and they say, we'll knock up a song for you. They go to the pub, they give them I Want to Be Your Man.
I hate that song.
I know, but here's the thing, so did they.
Terrible when they did it, terrible when the Beatles did it. That's on the worst of the Beatles album,
but here's the point.
sure.
Here's the point. Mick and the Stones are so grateful because a Beatles song was a ticket to success. Wow. They put it out. What John and Paul omitted to say was, it's one we're giving to Ringo. So they did it, and that's the little chip on Mick's shoulder that the Stones broke with that.
Oh, I think it went past that. He does, Mick Jagger just pops up a lot in a Beatles biography. You know, like he's at the All You Need Is Love sing-along. He's just, obviously it was a small group of, just like here in Hollywood now, the A-listers. It wasn't like the Beatles didn't like being Beatles and going out to like the hot club.
They were clubs all together.
They took full advantage of that. To me, the fact that Paul McCartney, the biggest pop star in the world in the mid-'60s, was living in a garret in his girlfriend's family house speaks a lot to the man's desire for family, because he really craved that, I think. And you see that. He could have lived anywhere, and he lived in his girlfriend's attic because he kind of lived with the family. He was on the road a lot, so obviously, and I think he was certainly not like I don't think a relationship was even built around monogamy. And probably in later years, that became an issue because there's at least 3 songs that seem like they're shots at her. One is maybe Yesterday, I'm Looking Through You, And there's another one that's For No One. There's some bleak romantic songs while at the time he was with Jane Asher.
And Jane was a very fiercely independent, working professional actress. So there was a little bit of tension. But Paul was going up. She was upper middle class. Paul was lower middle class. There was a class thing going on there. But Paul enriched himself. That was why Paul was so upset about all that eulogizing of John as being the only avant-garde one, when it was Paul who was living in central London while the others were living in suburbia. And it was Paul who was going and listening to Stockhausen and Paul going to the avant-garde stuff.
I'm just saying on the family level, I think he loved having a family, even if it meant living in the garret, because coming down to breakfast when they're all there and hearing about what the kids are doing and, the paterfamilias at the head of the table, I think that was all very comforting. And it didn't stop him, from what I've read, I think this is the Barry Miles book, that, he was still living the pop star life.
Sure, they went on the road.
Yes,
Lennon said it was like Fellini's Satyricon.
He did?
Yeah, Lennon said on the road with us was like Fellini's Satyricon. They had girls being brought up to the suite. That was it.
Right.
It was very hard to turn them down.
Of course.
But I'm glad you mentioned the Barry Miles book, because when that was an authorised biography, because Barry was a close friend of John and of Paul especially, and they put together the Indigo Gallery, which is where John and Yoko meet. But when the book comes out, it's called Many Years From Now, and in it, McCartney reveals that he was the first person to give a joint to Mick Jagger. Now, when the book was published, when that was announced...
Dylan gave him the joint. Yeah. He gave it to Mick Jagger.
But wait, it gets better.
He gave it to Bowie.
The Stones...
While he was blowing him.
The Stones were on tour from Australia. Just before a gig, Mick gets a press release out denying that Paul ever gave him something as uncool as Paul McCartney gave him his first joint. He's on the road, it's 50 years earlier. And Mick was so pissed off that he issued a press release to deny that he got a joint from
Why would that be uncool? I can't think of a cooler thing to happen to me than Paul McCartney giving me my first joint.
Because he was from the North.
Come on.
No, there's rivalry. It's just rivalry between those.
Yeah.
Listen, when Paul and John did a TV special called The Songs of Lennon and McCartney, where they had a bunch of different artists performing their songs, and John and Paul were roped in to be the MCs. And there's some great people there, and great musicians, and George Martin and Cilla Black and Marianne Faithfull, who's, of course, Mick Jagger's girlfriend. And right at the beginning, they're playing some different audio of different tracks, and that written by John and Paul, because by 1965 they were being covered by everybody. Ella Fitzgerald, everybody's covering the Beatles, and they play the Stones' "I Want to Be Your Man," and Paul turns to John and says, "I don't remember, did we write that?" And John, mindful that Marianne Faithfull said, "Oh yeah, we wrote that one when we were about that high." It's just a sly dig. And what's the line in "And Your Bird Can Sing"? Your bird can sing? Tell me your bird can sing and you've got everything. And your bird can sing. Marianne Faithfull, a bird. John is having a go at Mick. Oh, tell me that you've seen those Seven Wonders and your bird can sing. But you don't get...
Oh, that's awesome.
You don't get me. Because John is pissed that...
That's so great. I love learning something after all these years that I didn't know. And your bird can sing, right. It's like when you get the crossword puzzle answer. It's like, oh, that's what they were meaning. Oh, I see. And she's a bird, right. And
she's a bird.
That's wow. Yeah. I mean, the Eagles did it with Steely Dan. They stab them with their Steely knives, and they just... That was a deliberate... when you're on that level, you both have a rivalry, but only sort of know that there's a very limited number of people who know what you went through, what you're going through. Not that it's worst. We're not Marines here. We're not in war. But we all go through things, and it would be nice to know that you can just talk to somebody who you feel like, oh, you kind of must know. It's like doing the acid. You know what it's like to do this job. I mean, I have it with talk show hosts. I just do. It's like
a small group. It's a very small group.
I mean, cops. You know, a cop sees another cop at a diner at 3 in the morning. They don't have to say anything. They both
They're
know
in the same.
how they're feeling and what they go through.
Right.
And, you know, same with the hookers who are in the booth eating.
Reputedly.
Well, cops and hookers are sometimes in the same diner at 3 a.m., sometimes after they had sex with each other.
But when I did the Hard Day's Night DVD, I was interviewing all these people, and I wasn't allowed to interview Paul or George or Ringo, because at that time Apple had a very strict policy. We don't own the film, we don't deal with anything we don't own, because the film was made before the Beatles had the power to own it. So I was interviewing everybody else, and I found that some of those people, for them it was the biggest thing. Hard Day's Night was the biggest thing in their life, whereas for the Beatles it was just one, it was a few weeks in a busy year. And one of the guys told me a fascinating thing. I was talking about the scene in the disco and the Beatles are all dancing in a club. And I said, what was that Swinging London thing like? I was too young to be in those. He said, Swinging London was 400 people. That's all it ever was. The Time magazine blew it up into this huge thing. It was just the same 400 people, a few actors, a few musicians, a few artists.
It's probably always that.
It's all it was. It was just a little clique.
Always that.
And from the outside, it seemed like this monstrously huge thing, but it was like that was the inner side of it. That really was.
Well, is there anything that we should wrap up here that would be like great, viral, new information? You know, like, I don't know, they've discovered some age-defying medicine and the Beatles will be reanimated for a concert on... Where were they going to do Let It Be? On a Greek island? First,
there was talk. They were going to do it on an ocean voyage. They were going to do it on an ocean.
I love that part in the anthology where George goes, they're talking about that period, 68, 69, 70, when they had the boutique, the store, and film ideas, and started the company Apple, and had all sorts of charlatans and Magic Alex, all that kind of shit. And he said, but at the end of the day, we found out we could only really write songs and sing songs. And, it's okay. Like, that's enough. And sometimes people in show business get greedy, I feel. Like, if you do one thing really great, now there are actors and people who can sing amazing and, direct. There are hyphenates for sure. But in general, like, I never understood the film part, like why they were the first to do what we would call music videos. But they did them like in 1967. The ones I know, we've all seen them, Strawberry Fields, right, I Am the Walrus. These are music videos, exactly as we then saw in 1980 or 82.
82 when MTV turned up.
Okay, so why the 15-year lapse? Why did no one in the 70s pick up on Beatles make these music videos? Why that whole decade went by without them?
They kept doing performance clips. Nobody understood what the Beatles were doing.
But they showed them. They made them. They did the exact same.
And they did them originally just so they didn't have to go to the trouble of having to go appear on a TV show.
That's exactly what then was on in 1982. Quick cutting. They show the band singing the song, sometimes in different setups where they look different doing it, but they're doing it. They're also doing other things. They're falling down on skis. They're tumbling down a mountain. They're climbing a tree. Things go back. Yeah, it's a music video. And for some reason, they just fucking left it lying on the table for 15 years. I find it baffling.
It is baffling. When I interviewed Richard Lester, who did Hard Day's Night and Help, and was very inventive, and had worked also with Peter Sellers, and he said MTV had sent him a diploma saying that he was the father of music video. And he said he wrote back to them saying, I demand a paternity test.
That's awesome.
He was pissed off. Listen, we've only scratched the surface, but there's...
It's amazing how long you could do this but I'm sure that there are like radio stations that do it every Sunday, aren't there?
Oh, they're not just that. There are all.
But they're not as good as this one was.
No, of course not.
This
but
is, they're all just poor man's version of this Beatles
Bless
discussion.
it.
We got down to the
We got
nitty-gritty
to
about
really
and you're right, we have only scratched this.
We have to, now, for example, of obscure Beatles songs, the Holy Grail, the one that nobody hears. Have you ever heard Colliding Circles?
No.
Pink Litmus Paper Shirt?
No.
Left is Right and
No.
Right is Wrong?
No.
Deck Chair?
No. Who are these? What are these? But, because, I must say, when they go into the vault, sometimes they still come out with the gold. I love the two songs on the anthology album that were stuff Yoko had lying around, on the kitchen floor. I love Free as a Bird. I know it could have been better if John was alive when they made it. They still made a great record. I love that. And I really love
Real Love.
Real Love.
Yeah.
Is one of their best. I don't know why that didn't.
He still had the muse.
Yeah.
He still had the.
So I don't mind when they do that, but like these ones. But I've also heard some real shit, and I don't know these. If what I'm saying is, if we've been digging in this barrel for 50 years, I can't imagine anything down there wouldn't have come up by now. I don't think it's going to be better than Real Love.
Those four are being the most sought after.
What are they? Lennon tapes?
No, sadly, they were song titles that I threw into an article in 1972 when I needed to pad out the article with new Beatles songs.
You made it up?
I padded an article. I was commissioned to write an article for an English weekly.
That's not padding. That's making it up.
Yeah, but I was short of titles. I needed to put in unreleased Beatles songs, and there weren't that many. So, because I've got all the.
Is this a scandal?
Only when I fessed up to it later. I did it in 1970.
What was your punishment?
George Martin said if he'd had a penny for every time somebody had asked him about these four non-existent songs, he'd have been really wealthy. There was no penalty. It was only a throwaway. I was just the article. I was short of songs, so I threw in. I knew that Apple routinely denied the existence of songs that we Beatle fans knew existed, like "Why Is the New Mary Jane." We knew that existed, and I didn't think that Apple would say none of those songs exist. And by the way, these four definitely don't exist. So I got away with it. Just padded the article. It never occurred to me, but 20, 30 years later. Serious Beatles historians had seen that everything else in the article was legit and just assumed that these were real. So they took on a myth, and everyone was saying, oh, John plays saxophone on this, or George plays maracas. It was nonsense. It made me understand how mythology is created. And when I fessed up, I did a one-man show, and I made a thing about, these four songs I wrote for the Beatles. And people said, oh, that's nonsense. I like the way you did it, but I've heard those songs. So people were saying that songs that don't exist.
That's awesome. That's such a great story indicating something timeless and sad about human nature. It's so true. There's an old story. I remember John Chancellor told it on the Tonight Show when they were talking about an Israeli peace deal in the 70s or something. It wasn't going well. He said the story is there's an old man in Damascus and he's trying to get to sleep in the afternoon, but the kids are in the courtyard playing and making a lot of noise. So I get these kids to shut up. So he goes up to the window and he yells out, "Hey, they're giving away oranges in the marketplace." And the kids run off. Oh, they're giving away. Goes back to sleep. 5 minutes later, he gets up. He goes, "What am I doing sleeping? They're giving away oranges in the marketplace." All right, I got to go to the bathroom.
Bill, I'm going to leave you with George's famous exit line.
What is it?
See you around the clubs.
Yeah.
that was their sardonic humour. See you around the clubs. That's all he could say to them when he walked out. It was forgiven. But
Right.
There you go, is that line.
It's a great line.
It is.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to scratch more of the surface.
Anytime.
Club Random.
I'm retentive, so I have.
No kidding.
Club Random.